Welcome to Divisionalysis, I'm Fog. This episode was supposed to be the episode where we crowned the Assault Rifle Damage King. But I knew I wouldn't be satisfied with any answer I gave until I answered the question of subscriber Malloy244 about the damage provided by the rail splitter. So this is the final stop before crowning the king, as we explore weapon handling talents and the damage they provide. Let's go. Now, I've covered weapon handling before, but I'll quickly revisit why it makes a difference to your damage output. I'll just pull 3 random assault rifles here and their weapon handling profiles, as in what it would look like if you just let them go without any human input. What we have is the Honey Badger, the FAMAS and the G36, and you can see there are considerable variances between the 3. So every one of them has an accuracy characteristics, or the width of this profile, and they all will move in the X from side to side and the Y axis up and down. If we break that apart, the accuracy of the weapon, represented by the dot here, changes from weapon to weapon. The movement through the x-axis is something that we're not great at as humans and being able to control, but movement through the y-axis, as you can see, varies wildly amongst these 3, with the FAMAS moving the greatest distance in the shortest amount of time. But we're actually very good at controlling that vertical movement. We're able to reduce our vertical movement down by, in some cases, up to 90%. Movement through the x-axis, however, we're less good at that, and we have 0 control over the accuracy unless we make changes to our build. We have an accuracy dot that you can't control, an x-axis that you control reasonably well, and a y-axis that you control very, very well, which produces a movement box for that dot that you have no control over. So that dot and its size is controlled by your build and the weapon, and the movement box is controlled by you and your skill, and also dictated by the weapon as well. And on a target, the accuracy looks like this, and the movement box looks like this, and when you put them together, what you end up with is a movement of that dot and around that box based both on RNG and your ability to control it. And then that is what produces what I call accuracy clouds, or probability clouds, for where is most likely that a bullet leaving your weapon is going to land. And I showed this during my accuracy series, but in practice what that means is that all of these weapons at some point, based on the stability, the accuracy, your ability, but mostly predicted by the weapon itself, will at some point, it is uncontrollable that you will miss rounds on a target. For an accurate and stable weapon like the Honey Badger, that doesn't really start to occur until out to 50 meters. The FAMAS starts to happen around 45 meters, depending on your ability to control that difficult y-axis movement, but it is possible to get it almost as accurate as the Honey Badger. The G36, however, there's nothing you can do about it. At 35 meters, you are going to miss shots, and there is nothing you can do about it because that is controlled by the bloom, or the accuracy of the weapon. And what that looks like when you graph it for each one of the weapons is this, and I've showed this before as well, but it's an important point as we move forward, understanding damage output and what a weapon's characteristics do. So as you can see here, a very steep gradient occurs out around about the 45 meters mark for majority of weapons, and most people consider stability and accuracy to not really matter that much, because that degradation doesn't really start to occur until out past 30 meters, where we're really starting to see a sharp drop in the number of encounters at that distance. But this is where the melding of some of my previous videos comes in. Headshots occur within the majority of where we're going to encounter enemies. We love to do it. We love to aim for the head because we know that there is more damage there. But that same degradation or ability to land shots on that head that you're aiming for occurs even at shorter ranges because the target we're aiming for is smaller. And even the FAMAS at 15 meters now struggles to actually land a good portion of its shots on target. And out at 20 meters, it is virtually impossible to be able to hold that accuracy dot on the target consistently. So the accuracy graph for headshots, it degrades at a much shorter interval, much closer to you. And there are some weapons, like the G36 for instance, that at 15 meters you're actually only going to be landing around about 50% of your shots, with virtually nothing that you can do about that. And that has a very big impact on your damage output, probably more so than a lot of people realize, and that's because we haven't been playing the game optimally. Now, I brought this up in my headshots video, but I think there was a little bit of confusion about it, and I'm hoping that this will show you clearly what it is that I'm talking about. So this is all of the weapons over the 0 to 25 meter mark. What we have is 75% damage to headshots. There is diminished returns on the critical headshots, and on average you will produce 40% more damage than what you would by going for body shots. And with your accuracy, the number of missed shots quickly starts to add up to the point at this red line, whereas if you are going for headshots past that point for your weapon, you are no longer using the most effective tactics available, as in the reward for damage that you are receiving is being offset by the number of missed shots that you have no control over, and you are now producing less damage per second by going for headshots than you would if you went for just body shots. And remember that this is for a still target. So in all likelihood, this drop-off point and this balance point, where it goes from being profitable to not profitable, is likely much closer to you than even what is the average around about 16 meters here. But what I'll point out is there is a couple of outliers. The first one is very clearly this blue line at the beginning, and that is the chameleon. It has a very large bloom which occurs very, very quickly. And out just at the 20 meter mark is actually two weapons backed onto each other, which it's hard to see here, but that is the M4 and the St. Elmo's. So technically, the only weapons physically capable of producing a positive return for investment, or a most effective tactic being going for headshots out to the 20 meter mark. And you'll see that the weapons that have a better stability will have a smoother transition through this arc. Those that have a higher difficulty to control in the y-axis have a much steeper drop when it comes to missed rounds for headshots. You have to imagine in-game, if you want to play the absolute most optimally that you can, you have to switch immediately from going for headshots to going for 100% body shots at the exact point where your weapon system crosses this line. And remember, that is very, very hard to do because a target is moving all the time. It will depend on how much that target is moving as to whether or not you are able to land those shots. So it's very difficult to know what that transition point is from profitability for going for headshots to instead going for 100% body shots. And inevitably, majority of the time, myself included, we misjudge that point, and we are suboptimally going for headshots way past the distance that we should be. And that takes me to the next category of talents, which we haven't looked at before, and that is the accuracy and stability talents that are available on weapons. perfectly on empty, granting 40% weapon handling for 10 seconds. Perfectly accurate, granting 50% accuracy, which is 100% uptime. And we have the new one, perfect stabilize. Shooting gives 1% weapon accuracy and 1% weapon stability per shot up to 75%. Stopping shooting will start a time of 6 seconds, after which the bonus resets. So all you have to do is keep shooting inside the 6 second period, and that 75% accuracy and stability will be maintained. The only problem with Perfect Stabilize is that it's on a G36. Now, if I take you back to the headshot graph before and I add these talents in, this is what it does. It extends the distance for which going for headshots is profitable, and most likely out to a distance that you would normally switch to going for 100% body shots anyway. So not only is it adding damage through that distance between what your weapon would have been without it and where it is now, but it's likely also preventing you from dipping into a less than positive outcome and below the line tactics. Now what I can do is I can take the accuracy over distance data, I can then combine that with optimal range. And then we have a damage over distance graph. And this looks like this. Some weapons have a shorter optimal range, degrade faster, all the rest of it. And we probably would have been quite aware of this blue line being the chameleon, a very short optimal range, very poor accuracy, so it has a very poor damage over distance return. But this green line here, this is in fact, in my opinion, the worst assault rifle in the game, and it has the talent perfect near-sighted. 100% stability, giving you a positive which you're already very, very good at controlling in the Y-axis. And it takes away 35% optimal range from you on a weapon which already had a reduced optimal range. 27 to 60 meters is its maximum for the P416. So a very poor performance and probably the worst assault rifle that we have. But what we have now is data for inside the 20 meter mark. So we can now add that to this damage over distance graph here. And what we end up with is a full spectrum of damage offered by each assault rifle over distance. And what you can see in this middle phase here is the two weapons that we've put talents on, other than we've also got a few other in here. We've got perfectly nearsighted, the worst, but we also have the burnout with its buff active, and we also have perfectly accurate on the rail splitter. And you can see a considerable margin here where they are producing much greater damage, and that is where stability and accuracy counts the most. What we're all doing right now is probably suboptimal fire when it comes to going for headshots, trying to achieve them outside where it would have been much better to switch to going to 100% body shots. And so what we have is this massive delta patch in the middle here, where those weapons with greater stability and accuracy are far outperforming any other assault rifle in that period with their talents active. And in this case here on this graph at this red line, we are talking around 30% more damage. That's a massive margin of damage. And what I can then do is I can take this damage over distance graph, and then I can apply the frequency with which we will actually have these encounters to this graph. And what you can see is the distance over which the accuracy and stability is counting for the most is also the distance over which we encounter enemies the most. And when you combine all that data together, what you get is an output damage graph that looks like this. And what you can see is a considerable margin where the rail splitter and the burnout are exceeding the damage of all the other weapons by a considerable margin. Now there's two things about this graph, and that is one, that this assumes that we are firing at targets in the absolute most optimal way and shifting to 100% body shots exactly at the point that we should. But the other one to consider is that this is based on every weapon producing 100% of their own damage. And as we've come to realize throughout this series, each weapon has a very different damage per second that it's able to produce. The weapon handling talents Burnout and Perfectly Accurate, when you add the damage per second provided by the CTAR and the FAMAS, what you get is an added damage that looks like this. Perfectly Accurate will add at its peak around 16% damage, but across the spectrum of range, an average of 3.5% added damage. The Burnout, because it is adding 40% weapon handling, it is also contributing reload speed to the equation. And when that is considered, a 32% peak add of damage, but overall 15.5% damage added to a build with Perfectly on Empty. The only problem for the Burnout is the talent is Perfectly on Empty, and we only consume the full value of our magazine less than 50% of the time. So when it is active, Perfectly on Empty is one of, if not the most powerful talents in this game. And this isn't even factoring everybody's proclivity for suboptimal play. 40% weapon handling. And it offers some interesting insights to some talents that we'll look at down the road. For instance, when we look at SMGs and we look at Perfect Outsider, or the one that immediately came to mind for me was the chest talent Braced. 45% weapon handling, and all I need to do is be in cover. And how much that potentially adds to our damage output. But that's not what we're here for. We were here to work out how much damage could be added by these weapon handling talents to our overall build performance. And by doing so, we now have a complete picture of damage add that all of the talents provide. And in the next episode, I will combine everything. We will have the number of encounters, or the likelihood of the encounters and the distances. We will have that damage over distance, including the damage added by headshots, and also the damage drop that occurs from accuracy and optimal range. We will combine that with the weapon's natural ability to produce damage per second in a multi-target and a single target environment. We will pair those weapons with the best talents on offer and crown a king of assault rifle damage paired with these two builds, and work out which one takes the crown as the assault rifle damage meta for the Division 2. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see that damage crown be placed on the top of one of those builds, hit the subscribe button. But I will see you in the next video. Fog out.